Hey, what's the matter, you?
Um, I want to sort of talk about and kind of an enjoyable topic. Um, it has to do with Europeans coming over to the United States and loving our culture, loving what the United States stands for, um, putting all sorts of crazy, enthusiastic videos up, and then kind of thinking a little bit about what that teaches us about patriotism. Um, If you like this topic, please share, subscribe, click like, all that good stuff. So, have you noticed any of this, Christian?
I haven't really watched the World Cup. I don't have the channels for that. I mean, I think Tubi is like a free where you can stream it for free. I haven't really been paying much attention to that war. I have seen a few YouTube things. Someone was saying something about Walmart where the guy was looking at a pizza type of thing, and they just seem to be excited about being in America.
Yeah,
I did notice that.
yeah, lots of videos. I mean, I've followed a little bit about the World Cup, but like a lot of Americans, we're not as big as soccer fans as Europeans. However, I've seen lots and lots of, you know, the videos of Europeans coming over to the States. We'll talk about that. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So there are tons of shorts. There are tons of videos. Um, this is sort of just like a collage of some of the ones that the different parts that and the different items that people have really gone crazy over. Um, so we'll just kind of walk through them from left to right there and down. Of course, Costco. There's several big stores over and over again, whether it's Costco, Walmart, Target, certainly Bucky's. Bucky's is probably the number one store people are freaking out about. The Europeans are just impressed with. Um, Drinks, obviously, this sort of goes along with portion sizes. This is all like you see Europeans. You see, I'm wearing my Finland hat. Uh,
Right.
some of you may know we had two foreign exchange students. I would highly recommend anybody who has high school age children doing hosting a foreign exchange student is well worth it. Um, we had, as I said, mentioned a young lady from Finland and a young man from Italy. So, um, yeah, I mean, obviously, Europe's got a lot of great countries over there, and obviously, we came from Europe, so there's some shared heritage there also. But they are definitely crushing over our culture. They are really loving it, and part of the narrative there is that a lot of times all they hear is the negative, right? Oh, America's in decline. Oh, American cities are bad, right?
Right.
Um, Now they're kind of experiencing it themselves, and they're like, whoa, that's a small, very small part of the country. It is not your everyday experience. In fact, what they're actually talking about, and again, this is not me saying it, there is literally thousands of videos about Europeans crushing on our culture. And it's actually more than our culture. We're going to go into it. Um, Obviously, I've already talked about Walmart and the stores, the stadiums. You know, we didn't have to build special stadiums. There have been countries that have had to build custom stadiums to host the World Cup. We have tons of stadiums that could hold 80,000, 100,000 people. That's like no big deal. I mean, we have high school games that can hold 50,000 people on a random Thursday.
Wow.
Um, so, so again, um, down in the middle left, they love our big cars. I saw some videos on that. They love the size of the cars, the size of the roads. Um, we'll talk more about air conditioning later, but of course, in the cars is air conditioning. Um, We already mentioned Bucky's, patriotism.
What is Bucky's? I never heard. I mean, I've never heard of that until
That's
now.
right, because you're in New York. I don't think Bucky's has been to New York yet. Bucky's is the biggest, and like I said, you just punch Bucky's into YouTube, you'll see hundreds of videos. It is the best gas station, bar none.
Oh,
Privately owned company. You can't. I looked into it a little bit. It's not publicly traded, but their gas stations are massive.
wow.
I mean, hundreds. Like I don't know about hundreds. Definitely like 50 pumps. I mean, something. It's crazy big.
Wow.
And the store itself is got everything. It's like a flipping department store,
Right.
but it's killer food, killer snacks, their own line of everything. They've become extremely popular. Our state gets a Bucky's now, and it's an event.
Wow.
Virginia now has either 2 or 3 of them. So I think they're originally out of Texas, and they're slowly taking over the country. So if you don't have one yet, get ready, because I'm sure they're looking at land there.
Wow.
Flags, tailgating. They don't experience tailgating. Guns at Walmart. Of course, you can't buy an AR-15. I don't think you can buy an AR-15. That may be a ChatGPT generated thing. But the fact
Probably depends on what state.
yeah. Now, I will say, food-wise, they're crushing over all sorts of our food. But by far, the barbecue and the brisket down in Texas is probably the most videos on that.
Right.
But of course, also the portion sizes. They're just blown away by our abundance.
I was going to say, you probably define culture later, but it's got to be excess is definitely an American culture thing. Doing things to excess.
Well, yes and no. Part of it's that, right? We do things big. That is a correct statement. But there is elements of our culture. I do think, as a simple example, patriotism is an element of culture. Treating somebody just because they don't look like you. Obviously, we have been a melting pot for a lot of years, so we're not generally an unfriendly people. I think the friendliness is another thing that sort of blows them away. Our ideas of customer service are we take customer service seriously. They're not used to that. Like things like free refills. They're freaking out that our refills are free. Air conditioning. We'll talk about air conditioning more. Air conditioning is a huge deal. And actually, I didn't even know this. Europeans don't do air conditioning. Like the number of people who have air conditioning in Europe is like 15%. Wow. Part of it's they got sold the climate change thing. But they're coming here, and of course, we got air conditioning everywhere. And they're just blown away. They're like, what the hell? Some of them are actually pissed. They're like going back, like, why the hell don't we have air conditioning? They got air conditioning all over the place. So let's see, what's the discussion topic? Let's see, if somebody visited your hometown, what would surprise them most about America? And we've seen this too in the foreign exchange students. But have you ever experienced a foreigner visiting our country?
Yeah, they do have that at where I see the high school students that they'll come in and because I work at the high school, so
right. Did they ever mention anything they're blown away by?
Not really. No, they don't really get into it with me. I'm in the technology department, but
right.
I've seen I think it's more modern. The modernization factor of it is probably something they think about. Everyone gets a laptop. Everyone gets that's probably not everywhere yet, or maybe during COVID it did. I don't know.
Right.
With the Chromebooks and all that and smart TVs.
I will say, I think this slide it kind of talks a little bit about what you got on in terms of how we think big, right? Again, I will say the grocery stores always blow them away because they just, especially things like Costco, they're just like Costco. They're in love with Costco. They're like, how can you sell this much of something? I
So
could feed
abundant.
my family for a week on this.
Yeah.
Uh,
It is.
uh,
It is pretty amazing how much food is, how much volume everything is. It is pretty amazing when you
yeah,
think of it.
exactly. And this kind of tries to make the case that another thing that really does amaze them. I mean, like when we went over to Finland, when you're really with Europeans who kind of have been on both sides, they've been to the States, they've been in Europe. So this is, again, I don't know. I would say Ani's family is rich, but they're upper middle class for sure. There's a lot of doctors and lawyers and stuff like that. And they've been to the States and they've been here, and you see it through their eyes. And just as an example, one thing that does shock them is we have every climate, every type of geography. We got great oceans, great beaches. We got great forests. We got beautiful rivers and streams. We got when Ani landed in Arizona in a desert, she was like, "Is this the same country?" Because she's like, "Do I need my passport?"
Yeah.
And Lynn was like, "No, yeah, this is the same. No, we got deserts, we got mountains, we got everything. We got big lakes, you
Yeah.
know." So
It's
yeah,
diverse.
that is something that a lot of people don't understand. Even especially the size. Like when you think about Europe, I mean everything's squinched together. Europe's tiny.
Right.
Europe's like the size of Texas. And that's not even to mention Texas is tiny compared to Alaska. I don't know if you've seen them. If you like compared Alaska to Texas, Alaska is huge.
Right.
So anyway, so yes, so we definitely, I think because of the riches of our country, the model of, strive hard, bigger, take it to the next level, that is in sort of the DNA of our country. And if you haven't experienced this, then you see it all over the place, and of course you're shocked by it. And then of course when you think about it again in terms of larger, well, Europe just takes stuff like cars. Europe wasn't designed for cars; it was designed for horses.
Right.
It was designed for pre horses. Walking. So even that's a different, and you can even see that in our own country. You look at the East Coast compared to like Arizona, the roads are much wider. They're much more. They're better laid out. Look at like DC. The roads in DC are not laid out very intelligently. They're certainly not wide enough. Then you go out to the West States, and of course, there's plenty of room, and they built the roads nice and big.
Yeah.
American hospitality. Our hospitality and customer service is second to none. We take it seriously, but we even take our tipping culture seriously, which Europe does not necessarily share our tipping culture. But we believe in customer service and hospitality, and I think even just generally friendliness, like smiling at people. The Europeans will comment on it and like this. I just saw a video literally today from a woman from France. She was saying she was blown away because Americans would just, if she was wearing a new dress or whatever, just get random strangers going, "Oh, I love your dress. It's so pretty," blah, blah, blah. Without even wanting anything, not as an angle, not as just as a friendly compliment. And I think you see this friendlier theme a lot, that everybody was friendly. Everybody, some of the host cities just love the people. Like, I don't know if you heard about Scotland and Boston. Boston loved the Scottish fans. And the Scottish fans actually drank them dry. They were running out of alcohol.
That's hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they loved the Scottish fans. So, again, part of this idea that, we are friendly, we are welcoming to strangers. But I think it also starts to also bleed into not everybody, but there is still a core of of optimism. Like there is a belief that we can do better tomorrow than we did today. That if you apply yourself, now I know you can find pockets and people being depressed, and that's hard because there are areas that are struggling. But there still is, even though it's harder, and it's acknowledged that it's harder, there still is lots of people who are excited about things. If you're in tech, you're excited about an AI startup. If you're these people who we're working with, I have some of our investments are with these people who do multifamily housing, and they're excited about all sorts of opportunities in that space. So I still think there is a lot of opportunities. There is a sense of optimism that if you work hard, you still can get ahead, or at least have a good life. Another subset of the videos we touched on this a little bit in terms of the different geographies, but they do believe and get that the song America the Beautiful is a true statement. There is a deep appreciation for all our natural beauty, for all the natural habitats. And again, you see that it is kind of amazing when you think about it. We do have lots of coveted geography, and some of it really, really unique. And they were just crushing on it.
Yeah. Plenty of land.
Yep. Freedoms. They appreciate, and I think they get it. Obviously, this most obviously pops up with them being able to fire weapons. A lot of them go like, oh, this is cool. They're looking at all these cool weapons, like, I want to try these. In Finland, very difficult to get a weapon. So when we had Ani out here, I took her to a range, and she was hilarious. And then, of course, one part of it, I was like, okay, now I gave her the weapon, told her, obviously only some of the safety things, you only don't ever not point it down range, et cetera, et cetera. But then I said, okay, pretend this guy's coming right at you. He's running at you. Unload the magazine. Fire as fast as you can. She had a ball. She unloaded that magazine, lickety split. So just, I think the more people see that one sort of in your face kind of a freedom. But also, I think they'll get right away, the freedom of speech, especially nowadays. Some countries are, of course, prosecuting people, especially England, prosecuting people for stuff on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. So they appreciate that that's not allowed here. Not to mention, of course, the obvious ones are economic freedom, freedom of religion. I mean, the Bill of Rights we still have some systemic problems in our government, mostly about Congress. And look at our examples. You have Mitch McConnell basically dying in office. You have Lindsey Graham just died in office. We have serious problems in Congress. It is corrupt.
What do you mean by economic freedom?
The ability to anybody to start a business fairly easily, create wealth and keep your wealth. Some countries have very serious estate taxes, where they take the majority of wealth. Some states are talking about basically taking the majority of your wealth via estate taxes.
I saw a very interesting article it was because you had done videos on nihilism, and this one was called Financial Nihilism. It was showing how the younger generation is spending a lot of money on gambling. It went up a huge amount. It was some huge increase to, more than 100 billion. It was some crazy number. Let's say 250 billion, something like that. We'd have to look it up.
Right.
That and the predictions markets went from like 3 billion to like now 70 billion. And they're calling it financial nihilism because they're saying that
Yeah.
the kids are seeing that they'd rather just gamble. It's not they're not seeing, especially with AI and stuff. There's uncertainty of the financial system.
Right. Well, I do think the biggest one there relating to nihilism, and this is a concern I think for everybody. It's certainly a concern for us. We've talked about it before. The national debt level across the globe, and especially in our country, since we're the largest economy, um, our financial debt level is a significant worry and concern. Um, and I do think, in terms of nihilism, that is a point that depresses people, and I think rightfully so, because our government's not dealing with it, and they see that as something to be scared of.
And there's really also no punishment for the people that take advantage of the system. I mean, you see it everywhere. Even something like the 2008 the crash. Well,
Right.
one guy went to jail. The trillions of dollars of damage. One guy who really was like a low level nothing. No one was held responsible. I mean, they just get away with it. They're rape and pillage. I mean,
Yeah, you're talking about the banking system and stuff
the
like that.
banking system, and now with the crypto stuff. I mean, you're seeing there's articles in the paper today about the whole crypto thing and the Trump coin thing. It's insane. How many people lost? 3 point something 5 billion lost.
Yeah,
You know,
I've lost money. Well, I didn't lose money yet if you don't sell, but the idea is that hopefully it'll come back. It's not like there's no difference in the stock market. I mean, I lost money in the stock market too.
yeah,
Um, and your only hedge there, of course, is diversification, because I have
yeah.
like my real estate stuff. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, definitely diversification. But also, I do have a large percentage of my money managed for me by Fisher Investments. Um, so I guess that's not really diversification. That's more of like sort of an expert, and their stuff is done fantastic. Whereas some of the stuff that I played around with, I won some and lose some. Now I haven't tracked it, but I definitely got burnt by some stocks. I
Right.
definitely got lost big on some stocks. Um, so yeah, even that can feed into that financial nihilism, uh, because if it's just a casino, um, you know, I mean, honestly, I think the crypto stuff. Well, first of all, the Clarity Act is still going through Congress. Is the Clarity Act going to get passed? Ugh, probably. I don't think it will, because I think they're playing games, and I think the Trump thing hurts it. Right? Trump did a coin. Trump did other stuff. Trump made a lot of money off of his crypto crap,
Right.
and
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 the
I do.
investors lost a lot of money. That's what I was saying. The 3.5 billion. That was just from their investors in that thing.
Yeah.
That's
Well, but I mean, that's
crazy.
meme coin, right? I mean, it'd be like what was that? What is that one that the Dogecoin? That was a meme coin too. Meme
Right.
coins have no economic value whatsoever. You know, um,
No.
even Bitcoin, I've been skeptical about. The only reason I liked Ethereum was because it was programmable. So I probably even have my own bias, because if I would have, obviously Bitcoin has gone up to over 100K, but Ethereum, I thought at least has more utility, like it's programmable. You could do
Yeah,
stuff like,
because those contracts are important, though. That makes a lot of sense to have stuff automated through contracts and being able to do transactions. That makes a lot of sense, though.
well, not only that,
Bitcoin is just holding a value and it has a scarcity. It really doesn't have any other functionality than
right.
a value and a thing. But like Ethereum is like a whole programming language, right? I mean, it's a
It
whole,
has programming language, yes,
it's a whole
Solidity.
ecosystem.
Yep. Yeah, Solidity is the programming language for Ethereum. Um, and there are other ones. I mean, Solana they all hung out more than just that. Bitcoin still doesn't really, but that's a separate. That's a crypto conversation. We'll talk about that more. But I want to pivot here one. So this sort of discussion where they're appreciating our freedoms. This is where I think it starts to take a turn in this way. You know, I think it's very easy when you're obviously it's like us in New York when we lived in New York. You know, so many times you won't go to the landmarks in your own state until somebody visits from out of town or whatever, and then you're showing them it. Be like living in New York and not going to see the Statue of Liberty. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of times when it's too familiar, when it's too in your face, when you see it every day, you take it for granted. You grow accustomed to it. You don't think it's special.
Right.
But then when somebody, what this is what I like about what's happened with the World Cup. It's an example of fresh eyes, and it's example of somebody else who doesn't have somebody appreciating the thing we have.
Right.
And I think what this slide starts to talk about is, and I think the more you think about too how our country started, how improbable it was to start. I mean, just look at the comparison. When you talk about what happened, and another one other little thing, I did just recently see the movie Young Washington. I will say, excellent movie, highly worth watching. I love Washington as a person. If you haven't watched the John Adams thing, let me tell this little quick story too, because I just love this part. In the series John Adams, it had that actor.
But on HBO Max, that one.
I think it was on HBO.
Right.
You could probably find it. It's a series on John Adams. Paul Giamatti played John Adams. He did a great job, great acting job. But there's a scene where after the first few battles had happened in Boston, he came down to, I think it was either Philadelphia or whatever. So either Philadelphia or Virginia, and they're at some kind of get together. And Washington goes up to Adams and says, I am going to outfit a regiment, and I'm going to take them up to Boston and help you guys and help you defend, our fledgling democracy. And when you think about that, for Washington to say that, this guy could have sat out. He was already rich. He didn't have to do anything. And instead he says, when you think about a regiment, I'm going to clothe, outfit, provide weapons for, and feed more than 1,000 men and take them up and risk my life for the colonies. It's just amazing. It's literally amazing. And when you think about the odds, we took on the most powerful country in the world. It would be like some smaller country taking on us, right? Not something like China versus US, something like, a small country taking on us, and I guess even in some ways, you think of like Ukraine taking on Russia and winning,
Right.
Now, it's not impossible, Ukraine, obviously, for one thing. One thing Ukraine's doing good, of course, is they're reinventing warfare with drones, which is a good thing. So, it's still possible. Anyway, that was kind of the scenario here. I mean, they had a standing navy. They had a standing army. They had money. They had a monarchy. Everybody doesn't remember the times, right? It was all kings.
Yeah.
They did whatever the hell they wanted. They wanted you dead. They wanted you locked up. You were locked up or you were killed. It wasn't a question of, there was no rights. There was no freedoms.
Right.
You were at the whim of a monarch.
Yeah.
Whatever they said went. So when you think about appreciation, we're not even talking that long ago. We just had our 250th anniversary. This is only 250 years ago. If it's 20 years a generation, that's only 10 generations ago. And we had very little, in terms of military, and we had to start out by borrowing money from France. So when you think about this, of first of all, just the odds, this was unbelievably courageous. And you think about now some of the people. I mean, George Washington himself, I definitely want to dig more into the biographies of the great people. I do consider some of our founding fathers great people. My favorite president is actually Teddy Roosevelt. Um, but when you think about the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, that line right there, that we pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor, that was literal. Now, not that they all lost their life or anything. And now there was some that got arrested, et cetera. He says, several were captured by the British, but they were definitely risking everything for this set of ideas. Can we build a better government? Can we? And when you think about it at the most basic level, they just tried to distribute power so that to try to reduce corruption. I mean, that's it. That's our government. Three branches of government, separation of powers. That is the number one principle. And then, of course, Thomas Jefferson pushing the genius Bill of Rights was to show this is really for the citizens, And so this was pretty radical, and these people risked everything against the most powerful country in the world. And I think it's something that we should be proud of. We should be wanting to emulate, but not that we don't make it better. Of course, we already know there's tons of problems. Yeah. Okay. Take it as a challenge. What can we do to fix it? What can we do to make it better? We at least got to try, And
I think teaching civics more is an important thing. I read this. I listened to it. I think I listened to it, or I read it, one or the other. But it was the guy who was in Jaws. What was the guy who was like the smart guy with glasses in Jaws? He wrote a book.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. He's been in a bunch of stuff.
We'd have to look him up. But anyway,
Roy Schneider. Then it was the old Cragley guy, and then he's been in other stuff too.
Yeah. He was in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, he wrote a book on how America needs to get back to civics. It was a good, interesting read, and it was I think true. He's like, we don't understand the past, how lucky and how good we got it. We need to fight for what, we need to learn that. Everyone should be proud of it and learn civics.
I agree.
I think it's, yeah.
It was, here it is. Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss. Yeah, that was a good
one. So what is patriotism? And obviously, you're not going to say that the Europeans are having patriotism. The Europeans are just putting up a mirror to our country and liking it. But patriotism then is the idea that, your country is something worth fighting for, right? That you have gratitude to those who risk their lives, that you try to think about community, think about some civic, like you're talking about. Civics is not just only understanding it, but it's also saying having some civic responsibility. In other words, whether it's serving the military, whether it's serving in some community council or community group, or it could even be simpler than that. It could just be working in a community soup kitchen. In other words, but it's when you think about, your country and your freedoms, even your freedoms, believing in freedom of speech and not saying, well, in other words, not trying to silence someone else's freedom of speech, even if you disagree with them. If you really believe, think about it, that people died for this one of these freedoms, which is the freedom to speak your mind, then that should be a precious thing, even if you don't agree with the other person.
Right.
You can agree to disagree.
You shouldn't silence the critics.
Exactly. You shouldn't silence the critics. Let them have, people can have their own opinions. You can even disagree with that opinion. Right. That's what a voting booth is for, or that's what you vote with your money is for. You don't like somebody, if say it's a business or whatever, don't buy their stuff. That's fine. But they still You shouldn't hate them. Agree. You can agree to disagree. Mature adults can agree to disagree. The last part, of course, though, it also believes that you do try to say, how can we make this country better for the next generation? And that's where I do think, like we talked about financial nihilism, everybody in Congress should be ashamed of themselves. They really should be. There are some systemic problems. Just take the easiest one, like the national debt, that you are ignoring. They're ashamed of themselves, you know. Do you have anything else, any other thoughts relating to, you already mentioned civics, responsibilities, in terms of, again, I kind of think of it as it's just part of the notion of looking beyond yourself, right?
Yeah.
Looking beyond yourself, in this case, to the country, and saying, yep, I'm glad of what we've created so far. I'm appreciative. I was born here. And I'll do my best to try to make it better for my next generation, my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah. I think I'm also just trying to figure out for myself how to participate more in some way. Like I tried to join some local group that was like a Sayville community thing, but
Yeah.
they weren't not very active. So I'm looking for something else. But I think that's participating in something and getting a sense of community is, I think, where it starts. That's, I
I
think,
would agree.
a
I
beginning.
do think you're right. I do think starting at the local level is important.
I think our isolation is a huge problem for the country because I think, like, some of my neighbors didn't even like. And maybe I'm just as guilty because I saw that they weren't being friendly, so I, in turn, really wasn't very friendly. But I don't
Right.
know some of them. I don't know some of my neighbors, which is bad. I think that's bad. I should have made a more of an effort, but I do think that isolation and overuse, over dependency on gadgets and all this other crap is sort of putting us in a bad position, because we're more divided than ever, and it's not good for the
Yeah,
country.
I would agree. And I'll tell you, Lynn's a lot better at this than I am. Like Lynn does all her quilt guilds and quilting communities and this and that. And she knows tons more people than I do. And yeah, I think it's hard. I mean, I know there's things like even just doing your local either volunteer fire department or whatever. I did try to apply for that. Maybe they thought I was too old or whatever. They didn't even get back to me. But I do think the neighbor thing is also important. Obviously, my neighbors are not very close here, but I remember how they used to do block parties. In other words, does anybody do block parties in your area?
Not by me. I have seen them in the area. Yes, yes. I don't know why. I guess we just never. It's never been come up over here, but yeah, they have been in the area. And some of them
Yeah,
are. The thing is that some of them were friendly, and some of them just. Then when people moved out and new people moved in, I think the younger generation, the guy is a younger guy, and they're just not as like social. I think being
yeah,
social is different. You have to
yeah.
put
It's
yourself
hard.
out there a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think it's just it's like baby steps, right? You have to just try to break the ice. I don't know. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Um, so this is sort of the last. I think this is the last slide that I do think, though, this is just a good opportunity. I think this is just an opportunity. And obviously, the World Cup is still going on. It's still, like I said, I saw a video yesterday about a French girl. Um, so I think this is a good thing. In general, this is just another opportunity to see America through new eyes. Uh, and I think that always a refreshing thing. So this, to me, has been a breath of fresh air, and I think it's good. I think more of it, and I think yes, I'm even going to try, like myself, to be. I mean, I've always been patriotic, but I think, like you're talking about, to take some of these values that they are seeing and appreciating, and trying to do better at it, even at our small local level. So.
Yeah.
Arrivederci.